Good evening. Good evening. And welcome. Welcome to the community event that's being hosted at this beautiful Hawthorne campus this evening. My name is Tony Thompson. I serve the district as Chief of Staff, and I will have the privilege of serving to facilitate this conversation this evening. But before I do that, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Sarah Sorensen. Ms. Sorensen is a trustee, for our SAISD school board, elected in May of 2021. She's an experienced public education advocate with a track record of speaking up for students, families, teachers, and other school workers. She's a proud parent of an SAISD student, has served on PTA and other campus and community committees. She has a background in public policy, research, advocacy, organizing, coalition building, and project management. She's done extensive work in various nonprofit, state, and local governments. Her current term expires in 2025. If you would, please help me welcome Sarah Sorensen.
Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening. We're excited to be here in your neighborhood with you to hear what you're thinking about the framework that will help us with our Rightsizing study. I'll share a little bit of the history of the study with you. On June 20th, the trustees and I put forth a resolution that called on district administration to thoughtfully and comprehensively analyze each campus to ensure that we are providing a high-quality education for each and every student. We wanted to know whether resources are fairly distributed to support all students and all campus staff, and if not, how we might improve our operations to ensure a thriving culture for all. Prompting the study is a decline in student enrollment, without a corresponding decrease in the number of buildings that serve students. So we have an infrastructure that is built for our community with schools like Hawthorne that have been here for 100 years. An infrastructure that was built, yes, we love and that are important to our neighborhoods. But what that means is we have smaller buildings that without a lot of room to expand for folks, and we have a lot of smaller buildings that serve neighborhoods, that serve choice students, and we need to look at how those resources are distributed through those buildings and for the students in those spaces. And so, in other words, we're putting money and resources into too many buildings when we could be putting more money and resources into educating our children, fully staffing our schools, and fairly compensating our staff. And I do also want to address that I know, yes, we prioritize our students and our staff over the physical building space, but we know that these buildings often serve as the anchor of our neighborhoods, our community space, and so they are important. I know that Hawthorne has families who have been here for generations, and that is the case of the schools throughout our district, and that is important. That is something that we need to acknowledge and respect. We put forth this resolution knowing that a study of this kind could result in recommendations to close or consolidate school buildings, not as a punitive measure, but as a strategy that is forward-thinking, courageous, and brave. Change is hard, but with change comes opportunity. And that's where we're looking for your input. How do we do this process in a way that is fair and equitable, that honors what our schools mean to us? And this is your chance to share that with us. This is your opportunity to reimagine a better education and a better future for your children, and a better future for all the educators who mentor your children's growth, and my child as well. Tonight, we look forward to hearing your thoughts on how to ensure the results of the study meet your needs for a brighter future. And now, I'd like to introduce our superintendent, Dr. Jaime Aquino.
Buenas tardes, familia. Oh, you can do better than that. Buenas tardes, familia. Thank you for being here at Hawthorne, and I want to commend this community. Recently, we celebrated the centennial of Hawthorne. And I know I apologize because I wanted to be here for the celebration, but I was sick. And the principal, Christina Smith, said, just stay home and take care of yourself. I also want to recognize, I think we have our board president with us, President Cristina Martinez. Thank you for being here. I'm very fortunate to work with an amazing board who's really committing to standing up for what they believe is right for our kids. Before I begin, I want to make sure that I clarify, because this has happened in other of these sessions. I think this is probably number 12, 11 of 14 meetings, and in one of those meetings, families and parents thought that because we were hosting it in the meeting, the community meeting, in that specific school, that meant that a decision was made to close that school. That's not the case. That's not the case. The only reason we're doing this is we're doing 2 community meetings per single member district, and we wanted to make sure that we had a large space because we didn't know how many people will show up. So the first round we did it at our comprehensive high school. So we wanted to go to the community and a place that accommodate. Actually, in that same meeting where they thought that because we were hosting it there, we were going to close, this was fully packed. We had to actually bring more tables and chair, which was great. So again, thank you for being here tonight or this evening. We are talking about our commitment to every child, no matter where that child is a student within our district. And we need you to know that we are committed to embracing, engaging, and educating all children as if they were our own, so that they have the power to realize and shape the world that they live in. That's why we are here. We're also firmly committed to delivering on our promise of a high-quality education for every single child as it is outlined in our new strategic management plan, one that we call Always Learning. And we call them Always Learning because, like our kids, the district is also evolving. And I want to tell you what one of our students in my superintendent advisory council told me, Jaime, please do not call the strategic management plan, the Always Learning, a plan. It is not a plan. He said, please refer to it as a document of promises. And that is so true coming from a student. That Always Learning is the promise that we have made to our students and their family, that if they happen to spend 12 or 13 years of their lives with us at SAISD, we promise a better and brighter future for them. And that's why we are here. We want to do better for your children, our children, by ensuring that each student has the similar access to extraordinary educational experience as well as extracurricular opportunity, regardless of the neighborhood or the school that their family chooses for them. However, we are not satisfied with our current situation in which smaller schools face tremendous challenges in providing all the necessary resource and support for their students and staff. At the same time, we are also not satisfied with the fact that our larger schools lack the necessary resources to adequately support their students and deliver on the promise of high-quality education. And that's because we allocate some of the resources to assist our smaller scale school. So we find ourselves at a crossroads. We really do. Because our small schools, we cannot offer all the array of services, even though they're more expensive to operate. On the other hand, our larger schools, we have not been able to provide the right funding for them to provide all the support because we have to reallocate some of those resources to maintain our small school, and you'll hear more of that in a minute. So we are willing, as a familia, to take the tougher path to ensure that your children, our children, get the best education possible for a brighter future. We want your kids to be able to become me or better than me as an immigrant, as an English learner who came to this country as an adult. I am truly living the American dream, and that's what we want for every single one of our students. And I know, or we understand, that you may have questions and concerns about this study and what it could mean. We want you to know and be honest with you that this study, as Trustee Sorensen said, will lead us to recommend changes to our Board of Trustees, like combining or closing schools for the 2024-25 school year. But here's the important part that I want you to keep in mind. We are committed to making this study a transparent one and a two-way process. That we are here eager to listen to your thoughts. We are going to keep you informed throughout the process. But we want to hear your questions, your concerns, and even your pushback as we engage in today's conversation. Your input matters, and we are grateful that you're here to work with us. As I said, you will have a voice in this process. We want you today particularly to give us thoughts on the criteria that we're going to use to look at every campuses and determine whether they will be impacted as part of the right-sizing study. We know that these decisions are complex and not easy to make. Let me tell you, nobody wants to close school. I never thought that so early in my tenure, only 15 months, I will be having this conversation with our community. I know the board doesn't want that, but as you'll hear when Tony comes back and explain our reality, we really find ourselves as a crossroad. And we also know that each campus and community has unique factors, and the discussion that we will have today will help us better understand your hopes, your fears, and your dreams and aspirations for your children, but also for the entire district. There's one important value that we in the district believe, and we want to share it with you today. And that is our strong conviction, beginning with our board, that resources should be distributed fairly to support all students. Furthermore, we strongly believe that those members of our familia that are more vulnerable are the ones that, if any, will require more support and resources. So it is important to know that this right-sizing study could begin to reverse years of growing systemic inequities, where some students and family benefit from incredible better buildings, greater access to academic opportunity and extracurricular opportunity as well compared to others. So once again, thank you for being here. Together, we're going to build a better and stronger plan that will enhance our ability to keep on our promise to our students and to all of you, that your students will be able to pursue a life with boundaries. So now I want to welcome back again our Chief of Staff, Tony Thompson, who does not need an introduction. She's a legend within SAISD. Tony went to some of our school, graduated as a Mustang from Jefferson High School. There, Courtney. Go Mustangs, right? Go all my high school, okay? I know I don't want to say, like, Jaime, what about the Bears? And, all our high school, but in honor of her. But in addition to that, Tony has spent her entire professional life serving SAISD, over 40 years with us. So if there's someone who's really well equipped to facilitate this conversation is somebody who has spent the last 4 decades of her life trying to ensure that every single kid gets the best education possible. So please join me in welcoming Tony Thompson.
I know once you work at Hawthorne, you stay with Hawthorne. I've run into a few folks in the room who even say, "You're still here?" You know, I met you when I first came to the school district many, many, many years ago in personnel. But it certainly is, I've been very fortunate to not only live in the SAISD boundary for my entire life, graduated from high school in SAISD, and I've worked for SAISD since 1980. And it's for those reasons that I'm deeply rooted, invested, committed, and some would even say protective about the district and what happens, especially to our students, our families, and our staff members. And it's really an honor to be able to facilitate this conversation. So over the next couple of hours, we're going to engage in a rich discussion about the future of SAISD and what it looks like and what it means to be able to deliver on those promises or commitments that Superintendent Aquino referred to make sure that we're providing a quality education to every child in every community. And we'll start by exploring data and a review of the criteria that we'll use to frame the decision-making process. And you're going to have an opportunity in about 20 minutes to really provide good feedback to us that will help us inform the decision-making process for this purpose. Before we begin with that, though, I want you to look at a card that's kind of like a little, not placeholder, but a little tabletop card on your tables, because you're going to hear us refer to the word thrive or thriving repeatedly tonight. And by definition, thrive means to grow, develop, prosper, or flourish well or vigorously. And we want all students to thrive. We want all campuses to thrive in SAISD. Superintendent Aquino mentioned the district's strategic management plan, which is called Always Learning. And we were able to secure an unprecedented amount of support and responses to a survey that was submitted, last school year. Over 6,000 individuals responded to the survey, and as a result of that, we made a commitment to enter into a long conversation and discussion about what thriving or successful schools would look like. So we convened a committee of 50 diverse members that you see here: students, teachers, school leaders, central office staff, district staff, that helped us create a vision for thriving students, teachers, schools, and the district itself. And it was their input that helped us create what we refer to again as Always Learning. We also went back to the community to ask the community members, if you had $100 to spend on a thriving school, what would you prioritize? We had about 2,000 individuals respond, and the majority were students. 50% of those who responded were students. And these are the top 10 priorities that the respondents said they wanted to see in a thriving school. The first is one that I know everybody in the room would agree is important. You want schools that are welcoming and safe. And who wouldn't, especially in light of all of the things that have been happening over the last several years now throughout the country. They also indicated how important it was to offer extra support for struggling and advanced students. We always want to make sure that we're giving students who are struggling hurdle help. We also want to make sure that we're continuing to push and stretch advanced students so that they can continue to advance and grow. They talked about the importance of prioritizing student mental health and well-being. Superintendent Aquino convenes a group of students that he meets with on a monthly basis. The number one topic that they identified as important to them all of last school year was student mental health. Since the pandemic, we have had more students reach out for and have a need for mental health support than ever before. So we know how important this is as well. The next one was to make sure that students are prepared at or above grade level. At grade level should be the baseline. You know, it should never be lower than that. So of course we want to make sure that we're providing the resources for that. And to also ensure that we provide extra support and resources with students with disabilities, and that's always important to us. Also wanted to make sure that we're, again, pushing and stretching students to be independent leaders and thinkers, and to furnish them with up-to-date technology. Our district has been fortunate over the last several years to keep our technology updated, but you can't let technology get old either. And we want to make sure that we're continuing to provide up-to-date technology resources, not only for students, but also for staff. And the other thing that they mentioned was embracing family in the community. And obviously that's one of the reasons that we're holding 14 community events in this round, because we know how important it is to get your input and your feedback and to make sure that you're informed and that you understand what we're considering. And then to offer a wide range of extracurricular activities. And extracurricular, whether it's fine arts, whether it's athletics, whether it's other UIL kinds of events, is so important in terms of attracting students to school, keeping students in school, getting them to focus on their grades so that they can participate, and it opens up opportunities for the community and for family members to get involved as well. And last but not least, they talked about the importance of up-to-date furniture and equipment. We want every facility to look like the Hawthorne facility. We want all of our facilities to be up-to-date. And, this is another priority that they established that we also feel real strongly about. So again, in a few minutes, you're going to break into groups, smaller groups, so that you can focus on the thriving profiles and learn more about what the thriving profiles mean, and so that you can also provide feedback about those. But it's these thriving profiles that cause us to reflect on whether in our current reality we're really equipped to meet the needs, of our students in the way that we're describing, or if we have to continue to tolerate inequities that we know currently exist. So this reflection drove us to look at data, and we concluded that we're at a crossroads, and again, we either need to have this difficult conversation or we're putting ourselves in the position to tolerate current inequities. And as stewards of your children, we feel obligated to ask, can we live with a system where we offer more resources and support to some students while not offering the same resources and support to others? So whether you have spent your entire life in SAISD like I have, or you're fairly new to the community, you may be wondering now, so how did we get here? So you're going to see some good graphic representations that will capture some of the things that have led to the current condition. So our data tells us this: SAISD has been losing enrollment steadily for over 20 years, and it actually goes farther back than that. We're stopping at 20 because 15 years ago, we did make some effort to make sure that the decline of enrollment was trying to keep up with some of the schools that we closed 15 years ago. And we've, again, been reluctant to close schools. No one likes to go through that process. Again, we did it 15 years ago. It was difficult then, and it's always going to be difficult. But to give you some context, and I realize that, again, I said that we're focused right now on the last 20 years, but this has been a decades-long problem. So I'll give you an example, and granted, I finished in the class of a long time ago, but I'll still use it for a contextual example, because in my sophomore class at Jefferson, there were 1,300 in the class. We have 2 high schools that have fewer than 1,300 students. My senior class graduated with over 950, and we don't have any schools that come close to having those kinds of numbers, and it's because of the decline in enrollment, not only in SAISD, but certainly in other districts as well. In addition to that, there's another important point that I'll share with you, and it has to do with the number of schools that some of the other large large districts in Bexar County have, and how many students they serve. So I'm going to start with Northside, because Northside is the largest in Bexar County, the fourth largest in the state. They serve 102,000 students on 125 campuses. Northeast is the second largest in Bexar County. They serve 60,000 students on 75 campuses. Judson is the fourth largest. We're the third in Bexar County. Judson serves 24,000 students on 32 campuses. SAISD serves a little bit fewer than 45,000 students on 98 campuses. That's a huge difference, a huge difference. And again, it's for lots of reasons, and we're going to talk about some of those reasons next. And despite the fact that we've invested in innovation significantly in the last 8 or 9 years, we still have not been able to keep up with the overall decline in enrollment. So in 2014, you can see based on this graphic that we were supporting and serving over 48,000 students. And in 2010, rather. In 2014, the district started investing heavily in innovation, and that included transforming 35 of our schools, 32 of which were tied to 1882 partnerships, so that we could not only keep SAIS students, but draw students from outside the SAISD boundaries. So in 2021, we had 2,000 students coming to schools in SAISD from other school districts. We were excited about that. And in 2022, we still had the largest number of external students coming into SAISD from other school districts. And that even surprised me, because I thought, well, it'll probably be Northeast or it'll probably be Northside. But in 2022, it was SAISD that was drawing more from out of our own district boundaries. And we attribute that to, the innovation and to just providing choices for parents, whether inside the SAISD boundary or outside. But despite all of those efforts, we still lost 3,000 additional students since, we still have lost at least 3,000 students more over the last few years than we even anticipated that we were going to lose, when a demographer conducted a study in 2008 that indicated that we should have more students today than we actually have. We actually have 3,000 fewer students today. So across the district and in most communities, this is not a new phenomenon. It's been happening for a while. And you're probably wondering, so where are the children going? There are two primary reasons for the steep enrollment decline. One has to do with the declining birth rates. We just don't have families having as many children anymore when compared to years past. There are just not as many children being born, especially in the urban core. The second primary reason has to do with affordable housing. So when parents and families decide, okay, we want to buy a home, there are not as many good options within the urban core as there are in other areas that are outside the SAISD boundaries. So that makes it very challenging. You see lots of apartments. If you drive up and down Broadway, you see all kinds of new apartments and condos and other housing that's available, but they're not homes to families and large families or families with children, that are school age in many instances. So those are the two primary reasons for the enrollment decline. Since 2010, our under 18 population has decreased by 14%. And since 2007, our birth rates have declined by 36% in the SAISD zip codes. So that's huge. That's a huge loss. And that's why we have not been able to keep our buildings full and to provide all of the resources and support that we want to provide for every child in every community. Only 20% of our enrollment has declined because parents chose to take their children either to charter schools or to other school districts. Only 20% of the enrollment decline is attributed to students leaving SAISD to attend charters or other school districts. So what does this mean? It means that our resources are stretched too thin, and it creates inequities, for students throughout the school district, depending on the community that you're in. The cost per student at our smallest elementary school is 2 times higher than it would be to educate the elementary children at a large elementary school. And that trend runs throughout all of the configurations. At the academy level, the smallest academy would cost 1.9 times higher than a large academy. Middle school, it's 1.4 times higher. In high school, it's 1.8 times higher. So this is not a new story, as we've pointed out, because we've been, living with and through this, for decades now. And this is a graphic from a demographer that was created in 2008, when at that time, we were embarking on closing 6 schools in 2008 and then 3 more schools in 2009. And it shows that, there was a prediction about what needed to happen if we were going to be able to stabilize the school district. And 15 years later then, we offered this video that illustrates the difference between those that have and those that don't have as much. So if you would, please watch the video.
This is a tale of 2 schools. Our first school, Mountain Elementary, is fully enrolled and nearly every seat is filled. Like all schools, Mountain receives money based on the number of students, as well as their needs, such as whether they are English learners or they receive special education support. Since Mountain is fully enrolled, it has a full staff and offers a wide range of programs. That's why they can afford a full-time music teacher who provides after-school opportunities for students and who organizes performances for parents throughout the school year. Mountain has more than 1 teacher for each grade level and subject, so students benefit from teachers they can plan together. If a student and teacher pairing is not working well, parents can ask to move their kids to another class. At Mountain, when a student with special needs requires extra support, the services are provided right at the school by a full-time specialist. And when a student is in crisis, there's a full-time mental health professional on campus who can speak with the student on the same day, usually within minutes. Mountain enrollment allows the principal to decide whether to hire an instructional coach to support teachers, an intervention teacher to help kids who need to catch up on reading or math, a full-time librarian, or a family and community engagement specialist to work with families. Because Mountain is fully funded, the school can afford to send teachers to summer training to learn new strategies and share ideas with teachers from across Texas. Now let's take a look at our second school, Ocean Elementary. Ocean is under-enrolled. This means that their building has lots of extra space and empty seats. Because they have fewer students, they generate less state funding than Mountain Elementary, and they cannot fully staff their school or offer a wide range of programs with the money they get. To help Ocean, the district must take some money from Mountain and other schools so Ocean can provide necessary services. Since Ocean cannot afford a full-time music teacher, they hire one part-time. This means the teacher is not always available to provide after-school opportunities for students or organize performances for parents throughout the school year. Because Ocean does not have more than 1 teacher at a grade level in each subject, the teacher must plan alone. If a student-teacher pairing is not working well, parents cannot move their kids to another class and must take their child to another school. At Ocean, when a student is in crisis, there may not be anyone on campus who can assist immediately. It could take hours or days to connect the student with help from a mental health professional. At Ocean, when a teacher or student struggles, support must be provided by the principal or assistant principal. They may not be able to afford an instructional coach, intervention teacher, librarian, or family and community engagement specialist. Ocean does not offer all special education services, so a student who needs help may have to go to another school. The Ocean principal must carefully choose resources and training for teachers because the school has limited money. All our students deserve better, and this study will help us look at all of our schools and see if we are providing the high-quality education we promised in our Always Learning Strategic Management Plan. This will help us reach our district commitment to love, nurture, and teach all of our students as if they are our own, so that they realize their power to shape the world.
We want all of our schools to have the resources that the students at Mountain School have. We want all of our students to have equitable access to educational opportunities that will help them thrive, and we feel that Rightsizing can help with this. When done right, Rightsizing can lead to better schools and stronger schools by aligning the number of campuses and their capacity with the number of students that are served. And when that happens, we believe strongly that our schools will become stronger and that our schools will be thriving schools. So to address our declining enrollment, our excess buildings, and inequitable experiences, the Board of Trustees did charge administration with a task to conduct a study and to develop a framework in collaboration with the community that will help us with our decision-making process. So we're holding, this is our 11th of 14 meetings in this round, and we're holding these meetings to share information with you, to give you an opportunity when you go to your stations to ask questions and then to provide your input, which again is going to be invaluable to us. Again, this was started on June 20th when the board developed a resolution charging us with this task and this study, the development of the framework. And then between August 17th and September 12th, we will finish the first round of 14 community meetings. We're gathering that input, we're reviewing it, and Superintendent Aquino is going to provide you some additional context when he comes back up after you have provided your input to explain exactly what we're going to do with it and how we're going to use it. On September 18th, we'll go to the board with a recommendation for some changes to the framework, and that will help, inform them about, the decision-making process. There won't be any vote taken that night. It will just be a matter of presenting the information to them. And then 2 days later, we'll start another round of community meetings so that we can go back into the community. Each community will, again, host these meetings, whether it's at the comprehensive high schools again, or the other larger campuses, or particular campuses that would be impacted, so that we can, again, visit with the community, provide information, and be prepared then to take a final recommendation to the board on November 13th. And it is then on November 13th that final decisions would be made. And it won't be about parceling schools out. So let's pretend for a minute that Ocean Elementary is an SAISD campus. And we go to the board on November 13th, with a final package and recommendation, and someone says, I can support this, but not Ocean. That's not the way it's going to unfold. We'll take the entire package because it would have been, the decisions or the recommendations would have been made on lots of thought and consideration throughout this entire process. And then it will be, again, on November 13th that the final decisions will be made. Once that happens, and assuming that we move forward, then we'll start to deploy other support out to campuses and to families. We have already created 2 transition teams. One is attached to the Office of Access and Enrollment, and their role will be to visit with parents and students and to be a support for campus principals that would help them deal with the transition between, closing out one school at the end of the year and being prepared to move to another school. The second transition team is in human capital management, and their focus is going to be on working with the staff who would be impacted by the closure, so that they're prepared also at the end of the school year to make the transition to a different school. And again, each school that's closing will have at least 2 additional visits, by transition teams, and 2 additional visits during the follow-up to the November 13th, just to make sure that we're providing the support and the information that's needed. So tonight we're sharing the draft framework with you, when we break in a few minutes, that will guide our decision-making process, and it has 3 components. The first component is values, the second is primary criteria, and the third is contextual criteria. So for the values, you can imagine why Foster Thriving Schools is at the top of the list, because that's why we're here. That's what this is about. The second is to support families and students. And again, our pledge and our commitment to you, to any parents whose schools are closing, and to any students on closing campuses, to provide that support to them. The third is to stand by our staff. We've had lots of feedback, even from the community, about, our teachers do a great job. We want to make sure that they're secure, and we feel the same way. So our intention is to stand by staff and to work with them to secure other assignments. And it's not just teachers, it's everybody that's part of the SAISD family. That's our goal. The fourth is to view all criteria through an equity lens. Equity means fair and just, and it's different from equitable. Equitable means exactly the same. Equity means equal means exactly the same. Equitable means substantially similar. So we want to make sure that every decision that's made is made through that equity lens. We are committed to not abandon buildings. We have had some real good feedback, from the other community groups about possible things that we could do with buildings that are closed as a result of the closures or the consolidations. And it can include things like setting up mental health resource centers, or opening a program for 0 to 3-year-olds. We wouldn't operate it. Another provider like the city of San Antonio might come in and operate it. Or setting up senior citizen centers, or even turning some of our facilities into affordable housing for employees. So there's a long list of things that we can do with buildings that would be closed as a result of the rightsizing. It won't leave anything just abandoned. There will be thoughtful decisions about what that's going to look like, because we know how important it is to not just leave abandoned buildings in a community. Even green space is something else that had been offered as a suggestion. And then last but not least, we would upgrade the remaining buildings and campuses. So for instance, if students at Ocean end up going to other schools, like Mountain School or Valley School, and if they were scheduled to have some bond work conducted for or completed for Ocean, then monies would follow the students and the other campuses where other bond upgrades are needed. So, we again want to make sure that we maintain up to date and state-of-the-art buildings and facilities. Primary criteria are the numbers criteria. So it's about enrollment. How many students are enrolled in a campus? It's about the facility use. How much of the school is occupied? Is it 80%? Is it 50%? Is it less than that? And then facility cost per pupil. How much does it cost to educate an SAISD student at one school in comparison to another school? And then the contextual criteria help us really finalize the recommendations. And they include identifying the best receiving schools for a school that would close, meeting the needs of families and students, and that could mean making sure that transportation is available in some shape, form, or fashion, and then meeting the short and long-term expectations of the board goals and guardrails in our Always Learning strategic management plan and our thriving profiles. So at this point, we're about ready to pause so that you can participate in a gallery walk. and you'll get an opportunity, again, to go to different stations so that you can get the information that you need, so that you can provide the input that we need. First thing I want you to do is to pick up a passport. Looks like this. They're scattered all over the tables. Get a passport, write your name on it, and if you want to give us your contact information, phone number or email address, please provide that. When you come back into the room, you're going to deposit your passports in a basket because we're going to have some drawings, for some prizes a little bit later. But the first thing I want you to notice is, what is the colored sticker on your passport? How many of you have a pink sticker? Raise your hand. Okay, there are a few that have a pink sticker. When we dismiss, you're going to look for the station that has the pink heading at the top for Thriving Profiles. How many of you have blue? Okay, you'll look for the blue station. Orange, you'll look for the orange station. And then is it green, Patty? Green, how many have green? You'll look for green, and then purple. You'll look for purple. So there are 5 different stations. We're going to give you at least 30 minutes to go through the 5 stations. There's also a staff station, if there are any staff members here that have questions. And there's also a family station, if any family members just have questions about their children and what all of this could potentially mean. So you may end up at 6 stations. Pace yourselves so that you can give yourselves about 5 minutes at each station. And when it's time to come back, I'll signal you about 3 minutes before it's time to finish, so that you have a little Tobin experience here. And we'll have you come back in so that we can go through some reflections and close out for the evening. While you're doing all that hard work, Superintendent Aquino and Trustee Sorensen and probably President Martinez will be huddled at an affinity station, because they will be pulling all of your comments together on Post-it notes so that they can then prepare a good reflection for you, and so that we can then add all of your incredible suggestions to our long list that we've been receiving. So with that, it's 6:47. So we're going to dismiss, and we'll be back here at 7:20. Well, thank you for coming back in. We're going to spend the next 15 minutes or so with reflections, giving both the superintendent and Trustee Sorensen an opportunity to share some of the things that they heard or have read based on the feedback that you provided on the Post-it notes. So if you look back over to my right, you see all the multicolored Post-it notes, because that captures the feedback and input that we've received from you. So I'm going to ask Superintendent Aquino to come up, and he can share reflections.
Well, thank you, everybody, for all the amazing feedback. As Tony said, all that feedback is there, and there's more coming. So Trustee Sorensen and President Martinez and I spent some time reading most of them, and we want to share some of our reflections, and we're going to read direct quotes of some of your concerns, your question, your suggestion. And first, I want to make sure that you understand our process. So today, we are not going to answer your question. We're not going to address concerns. We're just going to put them out there. The reason we are being intentional, the purpose of this meeting is just to listen to you and get your feedback. However, if you go to our Rightsizing website, you will see copies of every single Post-it and feedback that has been given. We are transcribing them. We're using them to update our frequently asked questions. In addition to that, on September 13, we will release all the information of the feedback that we receive and the changes to our criteria based on your input. Now, I want to be very clear that the fact that you gave us a feedback tonight doesn't mean that the feedback will be accepted. Let me tell you why I'm saying that. Because we're going to look for patterns. We have had 11 meetings. So we want to make sure that it's those that resonate within the community are large, as opposed to just responding to an individual concern. On the second round, after we release the initial package recommendation of September 18, every single question and concern will be addressed. Even if that means we have to be here to 2 or 3 in the morning, those will be, because now we want to make sure your questions lead. Let me just share some of the reflection and the feedback that we got from everybody here. First, you're not unlike the last 10 meetings in terms of the values that really resonated with you. One of them, a pattern today, was this value of equity. I mean, there were comments made that they want to make sure that there is the following: at every single school, a separate kitchen, clubs, parent meeting room, sport, counselor, dance, music, auditorium, art, better restroom, and smaller class size. And they feel that this should not be unique to only some student. The other one that really stood out of the value was standing for our staff. So some of them said, "We love our teachers. They work so hard. Please keep them." From the Hawthorne community, there was one, and I know, having been here for a meeting, we want our librarian back. So that was one. I will want to give you one that was written in Spanish. I know that there was a question, at least 2 or 3, whether we are providing this information in Spanish. We do have simultaneous translation available for anybody who's needed, but I'll read it in Spanish and translate it just to honor the native language of the person who wrote it. No se necesita cerrar esta escuela, Hawthorne, porque he vivido por 35 años y quiero que mis nietos sigan aquí. Esa fue ella. Now let me translate. She said, "There's no need to close this school," meaning Hawthorne, "because I have lived in the area for 35 years, and I want my grandchildren to continue here. So don't close Hawthorne," is what we're hearing. One of the questions that this was unique to this group was on the values. And this is the direct quote: "All values are great, but concern if we have the ability to honor them all." Okay? Another feedback that was given, which has not been common, is somebody said, please consider as part of the criteria the school performance, the academic performance of the school. However, at the same time, there was another parent who wrote this, and I quote, "2023 STAR data, especially at the elementary level, should not be used for these decisions. No one was prepared for the dramatic change in the test. We need at least 1 more year." So that was from a parent in terms of some people saying use academic performance, others that do not. One that feedback was, another consideration is when campuses merge, be sensitive to the change in leadership. Build on the positive hiring that we have done in the last year that is making an impact on school culture. Then there was one, give the consideration to the following. Consider the number of choice in versus choice out. Consider doing away with schools that have split classes, split grade, because that's not an ideal situation for the students or for the staff. Concerns, we don't have enough resource. Why do speech teachers only come once per month? Another one concern, neighborhood schools are important, so they're concerned with the closing that. Here is another concern in terms of If we add to our academies, let's make sure they are successful and thriving academic to begin before adding some more students. Make sure the facility capacity is important, as well as making sure that the new facility are age appropriate. There was a series of questions that were posed. Will out-of-district students still have the opportunity to attend SAISD when rightsizing is complete? How are transportation, this has been common, how are transportation costs being impacted in the rightsizing? And if families are inconvenienced, will we provide transportation? What would happen with school choice? Here we had 3 comments, but this one is new. Can we consider having a graphic design high school as a new school or a magnet school? From a question, will community members be able to vote on school closure as the school belongs to us, to them, not us? So those were some of the questions. There was a specific feedback that I want to give you because this was actually one that was very concrete. They were saying that in terms of the enrollment, consider a small school at the elementary level if it's less than 400. That 400 should be the threshold. At the academy, it should be 550. And at the middle school, consider like 750. Now, so there have been many questions. Some suggestion for the abandoned building. Can we use it for our ECE specialists to store their materials? And thank you for letting the numbers do the talking. Data makes everything fair. And a parent, I would have liked to have heard about all the rightsizing directly from my school administration that I know and trust. So I want to end with 2 quotes from students who were here with us. From a student, he said, when student mental health is good, everything else will be good. Please take care of our mental health. And another student said, a school should feel like a community or family, someone we can lean on. So those are the voices of our students. That's the reason we are here. I want to thank you for offering our feedback. We are listening. We're going to consider your feedback. As I said, this is very difficult. These are not easy decisions to make. And whether you're going to agree with the final recommendation or not, I hope you feel that you have been invited to sit around the table, give your feedback, and for us to explain our situation. There are many school districts across the country and in the state of Texas who are doing this, and the decision is made by the superintendent and the board was not involving the community, and we felt it was necessary for us to involve all of you in this. I also want to say I've only been 15 months here as your teacher of teachers, and as I said in the beginning, the last thing I wanted to do was to engage in my conversation so early in my tenure about having to close schools. And many of you will say, well, Jaime is new to San Antonio. That's why he's doing it. Nobody wants to do this. I mean, superintendents get fired because of school closure. But we are in a dilemma on our lack of ability to support our kids. I don't want to get fired. I'm loving this job. I love San Antonio. I love San Antonio ISD. It is like a familia. You guys have embraced me, and I'm proud to say that I am now a San Antonian. I closed on a house about 5 weeks ago. I'm doing some repairs, so I haven't moved in, and I have better news too. My mom and my sister are going to move in with me. So excited to have my family. My family cannot believe that though I've lived in other districts. I went to Denver, LA, Hartford, left New York, and never, and was there for 5 or 6 years, never purchased real estate. She said, my mom, you must really love that place. I said, yes, I can lead as my authentic self. People have embraced me, and you will feel the sense of familia. The only disappointment I have with my mom and my sister moving here, and then neither of them are childbearing age. Because we need to increase our enrollment, but they're not going to help us with that because they can't have kids. But I'm just sharing that. I can see President Martinez over there. There goes Jaime oversharing. But you know, I lead with the spirit of transparency. I share those stories to tell you that how I am committed. I want to retire here. I want to die in this community. Even after you kick me out of here, I will still be at San Antonio because San Antonio, and especially San Antonio ISD, is about family. It's about our familia. So I really want to thank you for doing that. And Trustee Sorensen said at the beginning of her remark, change is hard. It truly is. Change is difficult. But if we didn't have change, we would not have butterflies. So that's why we're here. We want this right study to allow us to give the opportunity for every single kid to soar and fly to the highest level they can possibly get. So thank you. Muchas gracias, familia, por estar aquí, y esta conversación va a continuar. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Trustee Sorensen to share her own reflection and her takeaway from the feedback that you gave us.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out and for sharing your feedback. It's always really interesting and a joy to read the comments that folks have and to know what a commitment we have to our schools and our children and our community, and to see what folks value and what they want to see in the future. So I pulled out a couple comments that really resonated with me. One, and these kind of reoccurred in different ways. Folks said them in different ways, but one was, words on posters are nice. It's a lovely event. What are the steps the district will commit to make these words into action? Will you explicitly commit to a pay raise, no job loss, wraparound service plan? And that's a very important question. You're being made promises. You know, as a board member, I'm saying things, or superintendent saying things. You're going to have to hold us to account for that. Because it's easy to say, you know, no abandoned buildings. It's easy to say no job losses. It's easy to say we'll make this transition smooth. But it's up to you to hold us accountable to that, because it's actually very hard to do. The next question, the quote that I pulled, will schools that are historically relevant when it comes to Black and brown communities be given a fair shot in the process? Will they be left behind? I'm going to add to another question to that, because it's kind of along the same theme that I want to touch to, which, will special needs services be considered when moving kids with special needs? And I pulled both of those out. As a board, we have decided to center equity of our students in our goals. And those include goals around Black students, students in special education, recognizing that we as a community, we as a country, owe an educational debt to those students. So equity is more than cost per pupil at campus. Equity looks at the racial makeup of our campuses, whether our students have disabilities and their special needs, the families and the neighborhoods. And so it's us looking at that beyond just the cost, but who is going to be impacted, how many of those students are going to be impacted, and that is something that I think, thank you for raising that, and that is something that we need to look at as a board. And again, kind of keeping along that line, having special programs such as dyslexia and speech are really important. Again, we need services for our students. Transition meetings for families and staff, time to get to know new families. This is not going to be an easy transition, whether you're, if you are in a school that's going to be closed and move to somewhere else, or if you're in a school that's going to be receiving or sharing campuses. This is a huge transition. It needs to be handled delicately. Someone said, bring pre-K back into Hawthorne. And someone else said, as someone who attended elementary and saw the school closed and abandoned, we don't want to see that happen again. And that's kind of keeping with that, you know, are you going to keep your promises? What are you going to do are you going to do what you say you're going to do? And here's a quote from a student. How will this new school handle having new kids? And again, how are we going to handle that transition in a way that we're bringing folks who've not known each other before, new teachers, new students into that space? Another quote, how will this impact schools that were previously academies? Example, Riverside Park Elementary School. And I pulled that one out to remind our school district has had a lot of transition over the past few years. We had schools that were academies that shift back to elementaries. So honoring that as we're going through that process with our families. How will it look for a campus that is already at capacity? Will the campus receive more students still? And that's a good question. How are we looking at what those receiving campuses are going to be? And along that lines, how will this affect the schools that are currently at full capacity? And on the other side of that, what capacity percentage is at risk? You know, some of you may have looked at the website and figuring out, you know, what schools are lower at risk. What's that cutoff? What is that risk there? Another quote, what distance will campuses be located? A 4- and 7-year-old will need transportation, would like it to take 5 to 10 minutes. And along that line, transportation, if moved further, how would that impact parents' ability to take care of students' needs? If the student gets sick, it's harder to get them. And it also impacts the parents to move, right, the decisions that they're making. And then, what is the perfect class size due to consolidation? A kinder class has 36 students, right? So if we're consolidating, how are we making sure that we're capping class sizes at a level that teachers can handle and students can learn? Finally, and this kind of comes back to what I said earlier, but my special education daughter may or may not have access to needed services. And so how are we going to make sure that the students who have a right to the services are getting those services at those campuses? And we need to center that in this discussion. So again, thank you all for coming out. These comments are going to be compiled on the website, and staff will take a look at them. It means a lot to come out on an evening and share your opinions. I hope you continue to share in this process. Again, I also want to thank staff once again for coming out. This is meeting 12 of 14. They're almost through the first round of meetings, and then we have the second, but certainly appreciate all the work that they do, because there's a lot that goes behind the scenes and a lot of planning and work that went into this, so very appreciative of that. I wish you all a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you both, for your reflections. So please look for a little half sheet that's on your table, because we want you to keep this handy so that you can stay connected. There are QR codes for the access to the Rightsizing website, to our social media channels, and to the newsletter. So did everybody deposit their passport? Because now it's time for the drawings. Okay, you must be present to win. So the first, Melissa, is it Asenar? I think it's Acounar. Am I close? Okay. All right. Veronica Pyle. Okay, come on down. Socorro Gomez. Socorro. Rob Sipes. Paula Stroman. Is Paula here? Okay. Luisa Garcia. Luisa? All right, one more. All right. Erica Juarez. Erica? Is Erica here, or does Erica just have a fan club? Okay, Erica had to be here, so. Norma Chamberlain? Is it Chamberlain? Okay. But she must have a fan club, you know her. Okay. Gary Covarrubias? Awesome. So, for one last time this evening, thank you for spending your time with us. You're here because you care about your children, all of the children in SAISD and the district, and your input is invaluable, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening. So, have a good evening, safe travels home, and we'll see you in the next round. Thank you.